Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a Year 2021. We are on day 229. I'm reading through Jeremiah chapters 35 through to 37. There's a lot of detail in today because a lot of little things happen. So we will try to move through this quickly. In chapter 35, we open up to an object lesson. Really an example that is taken from a worthy family. And we find here Jeremiah received the Lord's word during the rule of Judah's king Jeroboam, Josiah's son. Go to the Rechabite family and invite them to come to one of the rooms of the Lord's temple. When they arrive, offer them some wine to drink. Sounds innocent enough, right? So it's really good to have discernment to recognize a test. So in verse 5, then I set bowls full of wine before the Rechabites, along with several cups, and I said to them, have some. But thankfully, this family recognized this test, not only for their own sake, but because of what the Lord was going to do through this. And so we read in verse 6 to 8, but they refused. We don't drink wine because our ancestor Jonadab, Rechab's son, commanded us. You and your children are never to drink wine, nor are you to build or own houses or plant gardens and vineyards. Rather, you are always to dwell in tents so that you may live a long time in the fertile land you pass through. We have obeyed everything our ancestor Jonadab, Rechab's son, commanded us. No one in our household, including our wives and children, has ever had wine. It doesn't really give a reason why Jonadab would have told his descendants this, and it doesn't come into play here. It's the fact that he said it and they obeyed all these generations later. And it's a good thing that they passed the test because the Lord wanted to use them to teach everybody a lesson here. So in verses 13 and 14, the Lord of heavenly forces, the God of Israel, proclaims, go and tell the people of Judah and those who live in Jerusalem, can't you learn a lesson about what it means to obey me, declares the Lord? Jonadab, Rechab's son, commanded his descendants not to drink wine, and to this very day they have not drunk wine, obeying their ancestors' instruction. But I have spoken to you again and again, and you haven't listened to me. So Jonadab didn't give any reason why for his orders, for his commands, but the Lord always gave reason. It was always clear to understand the advantage of obeying the Lord. And yet the descendants of Jonadab obeyed him with no real reason why they should, compared to those who, would not obey the Lord, even though it was clear the advantage if they did. And we're reminded here in verses 18 and 19 that our God is a rewarder. He is a rewarder for those who walk in his ways. Not a rewarder as in he uses it for manipulation. It's not a carrot he dangles out in front of anybody, but his blessings flow to those who walk in obedience to his ways because they are demonstrating their love for him. So we read this. Then Jeremiah said to the Rechabite family, the Lord of heavenly forces, the God of Israel, proclaims, because you have obeyed all Jonadab's instructions and you have done everything he commanded you, the Lord of heavenly forces, the God of Israel, proclaims, Jonadab, Rechab's son, will always have a descendant that stands before me. So let's turn the chapter now to chapter 36. And we have the scroll. Yeah, so this is going to cause some problems here. So the Lord is commanding Jeremiah here. Take a scroll and write in it all the words I have spoken to you concerning Israel, Judah, and all the nations from the time of Josiah until now. Perhaps when the people of Judah hear about every disaster I intend to bring upon them, they will turn from their evil ways, and I will forgive their wrongdoing and sins. See, still holding out hope here. So Jeremiah does that. He dictates the Barak, but Jeremiah can't because he's prevented from going. So he gives the instructions to Barak, and Barak is a faithful man. He's stepping into a lot of danger here. So Barak, Neriah's son, did everything the prophet Jeremiah instructed him. He read all the Lord's words from the scroll in the temple. So he goes to the temple and he does this. And then we discovered that there are still some officials that respect Yahweh. So in verses 11 to 13, when Micaiah, Jeremiah's son and Shaphan's grandson, heard all the Lord's words from the scroll, he went down to the scribe's chamber in the royal palace. There he found all the officials meeting together. Elishama, the scribe, Delaiah, Shemaiah's son, and Elnathan, Akbor's son, Gemariah, Shaphan's son, Zedekiah, Hananiah's son, and the other officials. Micaiah told them all the words he heard Barak read from the scroll before the people. Oh boy. So it's always best to get it firsthand, right? So they go and get Barak. In verses 15 to 16, they said to him, sit down and read it to us. So Barak read it to them. When they heard all its words, they were alarmed and said to Barak, we must at once report all this to the king. So to hear a prophecy here and one there and one a number of years later is one thing. But when it's put all together and you see how consistent this is and you hear how bad it's going to get, wow. Yeah, so they sit up and take notice. But they show some discernment here. Notice that in verse 19. The officials then said to Barak, you and Jeremiah had better go and hide, and don't let anyone know where you are. Yeah, go hide. Don't tell anybody. So you kind of guess that they know how the king's going to how he's going to respond to this. And we see that in verses 21 to 23. The king sent Jehudi to take the scroll, and he retrieved it from the room of Elishama, the scribe. Then Jehudi read it to the king and all his royal officials who were standing next to the king. Now it was the 9th month, and the king was staying in the winterized part of the palace with the fire pot burning near him. And whenever Jehudi read 3 or 4 columns of the scroll, the king would cut them off with a scribe's knife and throw them into the fire pot until the whole scribe was burned up. Yeah. So yeah, we see that we have officials that try to warn him not to do it. He did it anyway. These guys were really concerned. These guys were in the know. These were the scribes, the wise men of Judah. But the king was more interested in the political advisors that were around him. And of course, he was mad. And so we find in verse 26, the king commanded Jehermeel, the king's son, along with Shariah, Ezrael's son, and Shelemiah, Abdiel's son, to arrest the scribe Barak and prophet Jeremiah. But the Lord hid them. Yeah, after having given discernment to those wise men. So then we read here the consequences of the disrespect. You can't disrespect Yahweh and expect to get away with it. So in verses 30-31, therefore, this is what the Lord proclaims about Judah's king Jehoiakim. He won't have any heirs to occupy the throne of David, and his dead body will be cast out and exposed to the heat of the day and the frost of the night. I will punish him and his family and his attendants for their wrongdoing. I will bring upon them, as well as the residents of Jerusalem and the people of Judah, every disaster I pronounce against them, but they won't listen. And then we turn the chapter. We turn to chapter 37, and we see that the king is looking for help in this crisis now. And verse 3, nevertheless, King Zedekiah sent Jehoiakim, Shelemiah's son, and the priest Zephaniah, Maaseiah's son, to Jeremiah the prophet with this plea: please pray for us to the Lord our God. But you notice the wording here. Please pray for us. You pray for us. You pray for us to the Lord our God. But they claim him all of a sudden, but they have no relation. So they want Jeremiah to pray for them. And it looks like things are getting better because the Egyptians have marched out against Babylon. So the Babylonians have withdrawn from Jerusalem to go take care of the Egyptians. But we find Jeremiah telling the king, the Lord, the God of Israel proclaims, tell the king of Judah who sent his emissaries to seek advice from me, Pharaoh's army that came to assist you is heading back to Egypt. The Babylonians will return and attack this city. They will capture it and burn it down. So while the Babylonians have withdrawn, Jeremiah figures he's going to take advantages and go deal with that land thing that was going on. But when everybody's afraid and everybody's on edge, everything looks suspect, even the most innocent thing. And that's what we find here in verse 11 to 13. Now, when the Babylonian army had withdrawn from Jerusalem due to Pharaoh's advance, Jeremiah set out for the land of Benjamin to secure his share of the family property. He got as far as the Benjamin gate in Jerusalem when the guard there named Irijah, Shelemiah's son and Hananiah's grandson, arrested the prophet Jeremiah, saying, you were deserting to the Babylonians. Serious charge. In verses 14 to 16, we're going to find Jeremiah denying it, but when you're an enemy of the state, any excuse is a good excuse to lay on a beating. That's a lie, Jeremiah replied. I'm not deserting to the Babylonians, but Irijah wouldn't listen to him. He arrested Jeremiah and brought him to the officials who were furious with him. They beat him and threw him into the house of the scribe Jonathan, which had been turned into a prison. So Jeremiah was put in a cistern, which was like a dungeon, where he remained a long time. He's not that young anymore, remember. And then we find the king grasping at straws here. He needs a good word. So in verse 17, later King Zedekiah sent for him and questioned Jeremiah secretly in the palace. Is there word from the Lord? There is, Jeremiah replied. You are going to be handed over to the king of Babylon. Not the word he was looking for. And then we see the king showing at least some small mercies to Jeremiah. So he must have really looked a mess at this stage. In verse 21, so King Zedekiah gave orders that Jeremiah be held in the prison quarters and that he receive a loaf of bread daily from the street vendors until all the bread in the city was gone. So Jeremiah remained in the prison quarters. The prison quarters was much better. It would be more like where the royal prisoners would stay, better than the cistern that he was staying in. Okay, that was a lot of stuff, but you can see here the panic and the fear, and you really get this sense of this foreboding that is happening. And Jeremiah is there, to give a true word, but he's also there to give an encouraging word for those who are willing to receive it. So you guys be blessed today, be encouraged. I pray that you'll have an excellent day, and we will catch up with each other tomorrow. God bless.